All right, I'm Spencer. This is 𝐬𝐿 and Ember, and we are doing take one.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate you being here. First of all, thanks for being here, dude.
Yeah, anytime.
I've said this to everyone, but I mean it when I say it. I'm really excited that you're here because when I came up with the idea, you were one of the people that I wanted to talk to because I don't know a lot of, I know kind of superficially what it is that you do. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to kind of dive in and explore and learn more about your story because I think there's a lot of nuggets that you can share with us. So we know you're Spencer. Mm-hmm. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. Maybe we can start with the DJing. We'll start there. Yeah. Just tell us a little bit about that, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, yeah, I'm Spencer. Spencer Aubrey. I go by PS Etiquette for a lot of the creative work that I do. So it's interchangeable. Sometimes I'll do events as Spencer. Sometimes I'll do them as PS Etiquette. And yeah. So I started DJing in college. So I was in a fraternity in college, and one of my fraternity brothers used to be a freestyle DJ back in Detroit. So freestyle, for those not familiar, is a kind of a subgenre of some other styles, but it's dance music that kind of has some elements of house, has some elements of techno, but it's kind of like, it's kind of groovy and just fun, like 80s. Kind of music, which is really a good time. So he was DJing that for a long time, and I expressed interest in wanting to DJ. Had a bunch of friends from all over the country that were all, we were all exchanging music and stuff, and we were using laptops. And then he kind of encouraged me to get a turntable, a mixer, and start with some records. Gave me
it the real way.
Right. Gave me a DVD. It's called Scratch. It's like, watch this. I checked it out, and I was like, cool, I think I'm going to do this.
Sweet.
And one of my buddies gave me a speaker. I bought another speaker, fished a receiver out of a trash can, and it worked. So I was like, sucked it all up. And that was my first rig.
That's awesome, dude. That's cool, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, man. So
kind of piecing it together.
Yeah, piecing it together.
That's sweet, dude.
Yeah.
Picking back up with the story, you talk about how you just put together your first DJ rig. And I love that story. The reason I love that story is because in the 2 or 3 times I've heard you DJ, I feel like that story is indicative of your style of DJing.
Yep.
One of the things I love about you is you will put things together that don't seem connected, but then when you do them, it's like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, those 2 songs go together and they go together really well. What's that like for you? Like, as a DJ, is there any preparation that goes into preparing for a show, or like, this is my set list, these are songs? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll use this as a reference point. So I just listened to an interview recently from Carl Cox. Carl Cox is a DJ, DJed a lot of house music and dance music and stuff throughout the years, but he kind of sums it up in saying, I'll make a playlist, and he does the same thing. And you put a bunch of songs that you think are going to work in that playlist for that particular environment or that particular gig or just a format. It could be dance hall, it could be pop, it could be a bunch of different things, but things that'll work in that situation. And then for me, some people program their songs out song by song by song by song. I'll put a bunch of stuff in a playlist that I think is going to work, and then I'll vibe with the crowd and the energy, kind of feel it out, and kind of incorporate all the different elements of the room and the people that are in the room into the set. So just kind of leaving it open and leaving space for you to be versatile and kind of set it up. So there's some preparation of like, I think these things will work. And then there's also a very live component of it of saying, I don't know who's going to walk in. And so maybe they'll want to hear like a salsa song. And it's like, let me have some salsa on deck just in case. Or maybe something like a dancehall track from, somebody's from the Caribbean and they love dancehall. So it could be all in one vein. I mean, also could be more open format and just kind of playing to the crowd. So.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories of you is you were DJing. We had a So Far Sounds here. And I think you were playing like 80s house.
Yes.
You were playing like house, which definitely seems like your repertoire. But, oh, sorry.
You're good.
cutting. Hold on. We're going to cut that out. This guy just disappeared on me.
Oh, no. The Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
It's okay. I'm sure it'll come back. I'm going to turn this around so I can make sure it's still recording.
Yeah, you're good.
This is just, you know what? And we're going to talk about this.
Yeah, 100%.
We're going to talk about this part.
Yeah.
When things aren't going your way.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to ask this question first. Or tell a story first. So one of my favorite stories of you is you were DJing out of So Far Sounds. You were playing 80s house. And then you in very next song, went to Kirk Franklin's Stomp.
Yes.
And it just I was like, those two things should not work together.
Yeah.
But you found a way to make it work. Can you talk a little bit about what that process is like? Of okay, I have these two ideas. What's it like to find that thing that connects them, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think there's a through line in a lot of different ways with songs. So it could be a vocal part, it could be a lyric that speaks to something in one particular song that'll also speak to something in another song. I usually, the base thing that I do is I'll DJ by BPM. And so a lot of songs will have a range of what BPM they're at. A lot of house and stuff is in the 100 and, 120s and whatnot. Some other tracks, breakbeat, everything, they'll kick up to 130s, 135. Drum and bass is in your 150s, 160s. All this other stuff, but finding things that are in that same BPM range that can kind of work together, also by key, and then again, just the ideas or the concepts of those particular songs. I might be trying to tell a story through what I'm spinning. So it may be a song about love in this one, and then there's a breakup song after that, and then there's a song about how do we communicate, and then about other things. And so there's a bunch of different ways to kind of approach that. And sometimes it's real time. Sometimes oh yeah, I know that song. I know what the premise is. Let me play this near this or next to it because it works well for what I'm trying to do or trying to communicate through the music. So,
that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
I never considered the idea of a DJ set as an opportunity to tell a story.
Yeah.
But I love that concept because a lot of what I do is storytelling. I'm in video production, and yes, it's commercial work, but a lot of it is we have this product or service. What are the stories we can tell around that people can then put themselves into? Is it do you approach your DJ sets a little bit the same? As talk a little bit about that. Let me make a canvas for you all to then put your own emotions into. Is there anything like that goes into it?
Absolutely. So what I also do is I'm a poet. So I'm the process of distillation of ideas, of concepts into things or moments in time that people can kind of step into is definitely something that I do when DJing. It could be a particular feel, a vibe. It could just be I really want to, I'm feeling this way when I'm walking in here, and maybe we're going to do a bunch of disco. And it's going to talk all about love. And it's there's a lot of hard things happening in the world right now. And this could be a set that gives people an opportunity to kind of move into a different headspace. And so there is a lot of that, I would say, with how I approach it. And sometimes it's sometimes I'll plan it. Sometimes it's just the Lord will just drop something.
Yeah.
He's just boom. And I'm man, I didn't even know that.
But we're going this way now. I know that feeling where it's you get that tap on the shoulder as young man, I know you're planning this, but actually we're going to go this way. And it just kind of opens and unfolds. And you're wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So that's cool, man. I'm glad you brought up the poetry because that's something else that I wanted to talk to you about that I know that you do, but I don't really know the depth of which you do. If I'm not mistaken, you have a master's in poetry?
I do, yes.
What was that like? What drew you to poetry? How did you get started? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was writing poems and things as a kid. It was just fun. Did a little bit of songwriting throughout time, but I really didn't even get into poetry. We had a writing group at the church that I was at, right? So this was back probably 2013, 2014.
Okay.
And so I was a part of this writing group. A buddy of mine was doing his MFA through this program. And at that time I was enrolled in, I was in seminary. So I went to seminary for a couple semesters and didn't do very well. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But I had some of the hardest classes. So basically I was in seminary, basically stopped taking classes through the seminary, and I was just like in this writing group. My buddy was like, "Hey, I know you're not in school right now for anything, but I like your writing. I think you're a good writer. You should check out this program." And I was like, okay. So there was a weekender session that they were throwing with a bunch of different people from the school. One of them ended up being my mentor through the program. But I went to some workshops, and then the lady who was running the program was like, "Hey, why don't you submit some writing samples, and we'll see if you'd be a good fit for our program." I was like, sure, why not? So did that, dropped 10 writing samples, to them, and then next thing I know, I'm enrolled in a in an MA in poetry, and I'm just like, no idea. I didn't have any I didn't take any like real poetry classes in my undergrad, but the way that the program worked, it was more about really finding your voice and trying to hone in your own particular writing style, and then creating, some work and a body of work around that. And so we did a lot of different things to kind of, tease that out. And then basically just about a year and a half, almost 2 years through that program, and I got an MA. But it was really interesting. I almost failed out like the first time.
Oh, really?
So I was like, I just kept putting off my assignments, and I was like, I know how to do this, but it was just, it was tough. But yeah, it was a challenge, but it shaped a lot of the things that I'm doing today, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's almost like the challenges. It sounds like it was something that was kind of very natural for you.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge was almost like, how do I take this thing that I don't really know how I know, but I know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And now because I'm in a program, I have to consciously think about this thing that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of, so the reason I bring that up is when I was younger, I started playing guitar in 6th grade when I was like 11.
Wow.
And we had a music program in school that I was able to enroll. It was a class I could take at school, and it was kind of the same thing, which was like the first day of class, the teacher was like, "Okay, play this note." And I was like, "Okay, boom, that's an E." She's like, "All right, cool, now play this note." And it was one of those things where it's like, I don't know how I know this, but I just do.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about like, because I'm curious how poetry shows up in your life now, and like how do you show up as a poet in your life now, I guess is what I'm saying. And do you still see some of that struggle of like, because I know this unconsciously, like there's some difficulty for me consciously thinking about it. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so the main style I write in is confessional prose poetry.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily have meter, it doesn't necessarily have to rhyme, but there's a lot of aspects of it that are still like storytelling-esque, and then also there is some form to what I'm doing, but it's more of a spoken style. And so there's some things that fit in like a traditional poetic sense, and then there's a lot that's more of spoken word and kind of performance poetry that rolls into that. So how I show up through that is I've done a lot of commission-based things through that. And so I've written things for events, for people. I've written poems I wrote a poem for a couple for their wedding.
That's awesome.
A couple times over, which was really, really interesting.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And so like hearing stories, and again, the process of distillation of like hearing about an event or something that's going on, and then taking that information, putting a creative spin on it that is kind of tied to my perspective and how I'm viewing it, and being able to present it in a way that can be maybe received by a lot of different audiences. And so it is a lot of that same process of, I'll think about, I wrote a piece for, it was Freedom Day over here in Old Salem, where they were doing the repatriation of some gravestones that had been moved. Cool. And so my buddy, he asked me to do this, and it was a commission. And so I was like, sure. He told me the entire story and the background behind these gravestones, behind a lot of the Moravian church, a lot of the things that were happening in history. And I ended up writing this piece that encompassed, a lot of like the aspects of freedom, of, what was important about that day, and then incorporated the history as well into it. It was like a 7-minute piece, and I just like put it out there, and it was probably one of the most impactful pieces I've ever written.
That's really cool.
In that moment too, it's just like it got silent, and it was like you could feel like something was settling in that building as I was saying it. So it was like things like that, where it's not necessarily like, roses are red, violets are blue, but it does communicate and convey pretty heavy and like weighty things as well.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome, dude. That hearing you talk about that, I'm having a kindred spirits moment, if that makes sense, because for what I do in video, it's a lot of, okay, I'm taking these abstract concepts. My client has a problem that they need to solve. They have a business or some kind of tangible problem that they need to solve. And I need to take these abstract concepts and translate them into something that is not abstract, Absolutely. That is very concrete, that other people can watch and receive.
Right.
And it sounds like with your poetry and your commissions, you do something very similar. I guess on the back of that, my question is like, do you see that show up in your DJing as well? Like, is it kind of the same approach? Are there any ways that your poetry and DJing cross-pollinate into each other?
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say definitely the process of like, I think I wrote down something where it was like, I generally will start by listening and just like, what's God saying? What is my body saying? What is the client saying? What are all the inputs that are coming in, and then like feeling that. So that happens both with DJing and with poetry of like, let's start by just trying to hear out where I'm going to have to be in a physical space with this work, and then how it can occupy other spaces like a mental, emotional, psychological, space in all those different ways for whoever my audience is going to be. So that's definitely something that is consistent between both. How they overlap, and so I'm trying to do this more often. Sometimes I have my own, I produce my own stuff too sometimes.
Oh, nice.
And so like, or, I did what did I do? For Fancy Groceries, this was at like a Halloween party like 2 years ago. Essentially, I started doing a lot of vocal overdubbing of tracks that I was doing in order to create more texture in the song and in the environment. And then like singing some things and doing some of this other stuff while I was DJing, which was like, something that was kind of newer for me to do, but like definitely brought in both of those things. And then I've also, with some of the other work that I'm doing, like singer-songwriter wise, like embedding poems into songs and then playing songs that have both poetry and, musicality.
That's
in the traditional sense in that. So it's like bringing all that together in the set. Even with house music too, there's some that have like the rhythm, the backbeat drops out, and it's just a poem, and it's just going, and like finding space in a set to do that, to convey a message about maybe that particular moment or that whole set. So just those are a couple of different ways that it kind of shows up. So,
that's awesome, dude. Yeah, one of my really good friends when we were growing up writing music, he would always say, if you take lyrics away from music, you still have music. But if you take music away from lyrics, you have poetry. And he would say it kind of as like a dig, but hearing you talk, it actually doesn't, I don't know if I agree with that anymore, because hearing you talk about your DJ sets, like in those moments where you can take music away and leave just the lyrical or the poetic part of it, like if you're in an environment where music's playing and it's like that's what's dominating and that now goes away, you're drawing attention to that moment and using this thing to communicate whatever emotion or thought or feeling you need in that moment. Yeah, that's really cool, man. I'm kind of stumped. Like I'm at the point where I have so many questions to ask that I can't remember all of them.
It's okay.
Because it's like, it's just, I see in you, I see someone who approaches creativity a lot like myself, where it's like, I feel very blessed and very fortunate to have found a way to do something creative that affords me a good enough lifestyle to take care of my wife and I and to have a little bit on the side. Yeah. You can't really ask for much more than that. But that's the question I want to ask. Because I do a lot of commercial work and it's a lot for a client, a lot of what I do is sometimes I feel like I have to be a dirty businessman more than I have to be a creative person. Yeah. Whereas like creatively, this might be the right idea. But to accomplish the goal of my client, I actually need to go a different direction. Right. Do you ever run into that at all? And if so, how do you handle that?
Absolutely. I do. Mostly this happens in like a corporate environment, right? So there is a specific set of songs that I can play in a corporate environment because it's just like some of the other stuff is just not appropriate. Yeah. And it's like, I can't play that. And I mean, I can play this in the club. It's fine. Yeah. But I can't hear, and I have to be so much more intentional about my song selections, or like even in poetry. Sometimes I'll like, you know, there's just a lot of things that are really, you know, not appropriate for, you know, that kind of audience. And so I'm like, okay, I really want to say this, or play this, but I have to be, you know, conscientious of those parameters. And I think as a creative, like, we're always dealing with lane lines and parameters and having to find some creative way to exist within those and still at the same time, you know, bring your whole self, bring your whole artistry and all that within those boundary lines is the challenge. But it's also like it really is like, that's what, you know, the derivative of a lot of the, you know, you gotta make something out of something that doesn't really work. You're just like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna figure something out and it's gonna be dope. And even though I have really tight lines, I can still find a way to like make it work in a way that does well. So yeah, I definitely run into that a lot. And even like, so I'll play, I may be at an event at a bar, and all of a sudden the family rolls up with some kids, and I'm like, dang, I was going to play this song.
Here's like half my set list gone.
And I'm like, all right, let's try to figure out something to incorporate the kids, because now we know, you know, they're here, and they want to hear Baby Shark. I played Baby Shark at this this one event, and it was like the kids was jamming, and I was like, the adults was like, oh my gosh, if I hear this song again. But at the same time, I was like, how do I get people involved in a way that is authentic to where they are, but at the same time really does, you know, I don't know, give space for those lane lines to exist because of where I am and who my audience is.
Yeah, that makes me think, one of the things my dad tells me all the time is like, if you want to change something, you change it from the inside. That's kind of the best way to do it. And these lane lines very much exist. And it's almost like a form of creativity is, okay, these are my boundaries. These are the confines that I have for this project. How can I still show up with integrity, but at the same time accomplish what this person's paying me a good amount of money to accomplish? And yeah, it's sometimes it's hard, but the thing that I found is that if I can accomplish this person, help them accomplish their goal, there's some rapport that's built there.
Absolutely.
So when they come around the next time, I might just have a little bit more influence on them or the situation. They might trust me a little bit more. And it's kind of like playing the long game. It's kind of like chess. Like, I could check your king right now, but if I take 3-4 moves to set it up and I get to a place where it's like, okay, now no matter what you do, it's going to happen. So, but that's the dirty businessman coming out. That's him showing up. So what was I going to ask you? Oh, yeah. So in preparation for this episode, we were setting things up, and today has been a day for me. Whereas like, I got out the house late. I got here late. I left my SD card, like everything. How do you approach the situations where, you know, whether it's, you know, you have a poetry gig coming up, or you have to write something, or you have a DJ gig coming up? How do you approach it when things just are not going your way and you still got to find your way through it? Any tips or tricks for that? I
mean, a lot of it has been like, well, I do pray. So that is one thing that I've been, and just, I mean, I'm a Christian. I trust the Lord. So that for me is a big part of what grounds me. And so that's one thing. The other part of that is like, I have been through some crazy situations in anything. Like, I'm telling you, I'm like, yo, like, my mixer died. I had a backup. My backup died. I'm DJing on top of a grill. Like, there's just been so many things that I'm just like, I've had to figure out a way for this to work. And just like, those were some of the most crazy experiences. But I was like, I have to make this work. If I don't, like, it's not gonna. I'm like, I'm not gonna get paid. I'm like, so going through a lot of those baptismal, like, baptism by fire moments of like, this is outlandish. Nobody ever, you know, you're expecting things to go the right way, but like, having to still keep your composure, not panic fully. Sometimes you're just gonna panic because you just panic, but like, not panic fully and just go through it and work through it,
Mm-hmm.
that is really like, it's built a muscle of resilience where it's like, you just like, okay, things are not going to go right. We're going to expect that something may not work out well. And when it goes that way, you're like, okay, think on your feet. How are we going to move forward in this? And then just like take the steps and utilize, I mean, working creatively through solutions over time has definitely, you know, just like I've had to rewire something on spot, like busting out a soldering iron to fix something, like taking apart my speaker, trying to fix my turntable like 30 minutes before the gig, like didn't have my needles, so I had to figure out a way to DJ with that. You know what I'm saying? Like just everything, bro.
Yeah,
It's just like something broke and you're like, all right, I can't use this speaker, so what am I going to do? I'm going to pan it this way. I'm going to use this speaker, and then I'm going to boost this so I can, you know, just trying to like, you're like anything you can do to move in the direction of like, I'm still going to create an experience that is going to be memorable and is going to be in line with what I said I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And just having that as like, I'm going to fulfill the obligation that I have here.
Yeah.
And like really stepping into it. So.
That's awesome, dude. I love that. I love that. Cause that reminds me like, so I don't look at, I'm 33, I'm about to be 34. I've been doing video production professionally for 10 years now. And in that 10 years, I can think of one project where everything, two, where everything went how I thought it was going to go.
Dang.
All the other times, there's some problem that rears its head when you're in the middle of it. And it's kind of two things. One is my preparation process is now about, okay, let me try as best as I can to influence this process as much as I can, because then I know where the problem's going to be.
Right.
And I can mitigate against that. I can plan for, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the food stylist on Frigidaire that we've never used before. They're an unknown to me.
Yeah.
That might be where my problem shows up. Spoiler alert, that's where it showed up.
That's exactly where
That's exactly where it was. No harm, no foul, no love lost. It was just one of those like, we hadn't worked with each other before. So we didn't like, and they hadn't worked with that client before. So they didn't know what their expectations were. And as the producer, I'm the one caught in the middle.
Yeah.
And so now my problem solving is, in the beginning is like, okay, you're kind of negotiator, you're mediator. And then by the end, it's like, guys, we have 5 shots left and we have an hour to do them all.
Yep.
Can we please just all get on the same page?
Right.
Let's lock in and get done so we can go home.
Exactly. Because we can't do this tomorrow.
Because the money runs out at 5 p.m. today.
That's right.
Because that's when everyone's got to pack up and go home. So that's one. 2 is it's almost like that's why you need to hone your craft.
Yes.
Is because all the things that you explained about your problem solving sound like I know my craft, I know my tech, and I know my art well enough that I know what I can jerry rig, manipulate, change, control in order to get it. I know it's not what it could be, but do it well enough that the audience doesn't know. And that's kind of the secret is like, that's a little bit why I love what I do so much is because some of it is like, well, how much can I get away with? You know? So it sounds very similar. Sounds very similar.
100.
I can't think of anything else I want to ask you. I've asked you a bunch of questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. I think it was kind of based on, this could be more of a dialogue too, but
sure.
It was one of them I think you sent me, which I put in here. Let's see. You asked, and I actually ran into Keith right before this. So
Vest?
Keith Vest.
Yeah. Nice. Shout out Keith Vest. What's up, man?
Keith Vest, the homie, though.
One of the nicest human beings I've ever met.
Oh, he's amazing, man.
Fantastic person.
Yeah, great dude. Basically what I was talking about with Keith was the challenge of like, what is something that is one of the most challenging parts of what you do and experience. And I think for me, it was, I spend so much time with other people and trying to invest in what they're doing and not spending enough time actually working on what I am trying to do artistically and creatively. And maybe my question would be like, how do you find that balance? And what are the aspects of your process or the ways that you've encountered this that help you to balance how much you push toward creating things for other people, and then also having enough to fill your own cup about what you enjoy creatively?
No, that's a fantastic question. I'm going to take a page out of your book. I'm a Christian as well. I'm a believer as well. And I think one of the things in terms of the example of Christ is that, like, if you look at him, he was defined by his ability to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way by doing that, but also like keeping focus on what the goal was. He ended up becoming one of the most revered people if not the most revered person in the history of the world.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the same as like this year, especially 2024, I realized that the fastest way for me to get where it is that I want to go is to help other people get to where they want to go. And by that, I mean, like, if a client comes in and they're like, we have this crazy project and we don't know how to figure it out. I've kind of become the person that's like, okay, so you have this limitation in terms of time, budget, and we need to go to Canada and figure all this out. I'll figure out a way to do it.
Dang.
You know, and that requires some sacrifice. But I think to maintain that balance, though, it's all about the way that I show up with my clients and the amount of respect I give them. Because then if now we're in a situation where they can't be disrespectful, because why would you do that? And that's not to say I'm the nicest person in the world, but I think the biggest thing is the client relationship. And if that can be good, if that can be a place of mutual respect, then it turns into we're in this together.
Yeah.
And now it's whenever there's a problem going wrong, it's like we're now in a partnership, not in a servitude, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So that's how I approach it, is like, I'm here to help you, but that doesn't mean I have a walk all over me sign written on my forehead either.
Right.
Like,
that's real.
And it took me a while to get to that point. Like, I feel like this is the first year after 10 years where I'm like, no, I have the stack of proof. I can look at the work. Like, I've directed national television commercials. I've directed regional stuff. I'm getting to the point where I've seen it all, done it all. Like, and that's not to say that I'm arrogant, but like, there's a confidence that comes with that.
Right.
And now when a client's like, well, what do you think? When I give a suggestion, I can give that suggestion with confidence. And then also reasons why.
Right.
So I hope that answered the question.
Definitely. Sure did.
So yeah. What about you? Same question.
I would say, I mean, that I've looked at it in a particular way of like, how do I get better at what I do? Like you're saying, to help other people get better at what they do, as a way of like, I want to be the best at what I'm doing, so that whether I'm teaching, whether I'm, doing development, whether I'm creating something for someone else, that it can be the best product that I can give to them. But it may not necessarily be like, I'm still working on an EP that I've been trying to work on for a minute.
Same.
But I'm like, I haven't been able to fully put that out. But I've played those songs. I brought some of those different aspects of what I'm doing in that realm to other people's events, to other shows, to other things, and like as something that could be in addition to what someone else is doing, and it's helped elevate what they were doing. And it was like, and you're right, it's built a lot of rapport, respect, and like the expertise and things that I've already garnered, even though it may not be at the pace or in the, if all I did was just DJing, I didn't help anybody else out, I probably could be further along doing that. But I wouldn't necessarily, like, one of my friends, his daughter is learning DJing and I'm teaching her. And in one of her college essays, he shared this with me recently, and he said, she basically wrote down, she's like, harmony and balance. And she's like, I've learned about how that works through him teaching me how to DJ, and it has basically changed my life. And I was like, bro, I will stop DJing tomorrow. It's the entire time.
Where do you go from that?
Exactly. I was like, what? I'm like, I could be on the main stage somewhere if I just poured in 6 hours, 6 hours a day for 3 years doing this. But that moment right there, I was like, you know what? I may not necessarily be out at Coachella spinning.
Yeah.
And I'm hopefully Lord willing, I'll be there at some point. But to hear her say that and the impact that that's had on her life, from even just like taking the time over the few sessions that we've had for her to learn and understand different aspects about this craft and about just life through that, has been like, I'll take that every day of the week.
That's awesome, dude.
So yeah, so that's like, I think that's how I'm finding that balance. Is like, it may not be where I want to be necessarily, but I have enough there to, it can still be impactful throughout, and like using that to help elevate other people and amplify their voices.
That's awesome, dude. And and hearing you say that and tell that story, that to me is like, because that's what's important to you. I think that's why you're so successful, is because you focus on that part. Is like, because my thing is like, if you chase money, it will always be something you're chasing. But if you let money be a byproduct of the good things that you do, it kind of just shows up.
That's real.
You know, so yeah, man, that's sweet. That's a really, really cool story.
Thanks.
Last question.
Yep.
Before we wrap up, I'm curious. So less so now, but one of the things that I struggle with is being caught between where I am and where I want to be. I'm getting better at it, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. Man, I think, I've had to just be more content in life in general, and just being like, man, I want to be able to have the bandwidth for all these things and do this, but like just acknowledging my own limitations. And like I'm getting older now, so I'm a little bit older, not too much. I'm like 35, so I'm just like, but I can feel it in my body, and I'm like, man, I really want to dunk right now, and I'm like, I might be able to dunk once this week and be like,
and that's it.
That's it. And you'd be like, dang, man, I thought I could do this more. And you're like, nah. But just accepting the fact that maybe there are, like, the places I want to go and the dreams that I do have can still occur in, maybe they don't look exactly how I would have envisioned them. But being able to say, you know what, like, what is it at the core of it that I really want? And like really does matter, what really has, captivates my attention in that. It's like, yeah, I'm trying to think about that more often, instead of just like, yo, I have to be on that stage in London at Fabric and playing. It's like, maybe I'll get to play at Fabric. Maybe I won't play at Fabric. Maybe I'll play somewhere else, like in Leeds. Okay. And it's cool, but it's just like that aspect of, it's not always just that individual thing that I'm thinking of. It's like, it could be a much greater and expansive experience that, is just different than what I had thought it to be. I mean, that's kind of,
I feel that, because one of the things I said when the camera cut off, I'm going to say it again so I have it, but like, if you chase money, you'll always be chasing it. Yeah. But instead, if you just like let money be the result of doing the right things, it just kind of shows up. Yep. And it sounds very similar. And one of the things that for that question that I've been approaching is like, when I left my job to start my production company, I was like, big production company and all these people, and I'm going to show the world how to do it. And then I had an experience, I think it was earlier this year, like my wife and I went to the movies at like 11 o'clock on a Tuesday in the morning. Yeah. And we were the only people in the theater. And I was like, no, this is the life. This is the life. Yeah. And it's like, the more I can find that, where it's like, really, do I want a lot of money? Do I want a big company? Or do I just want more decision-making power in my life? Yeah. And can I have that without needing to have a big, giant company and all this money and all this power and influence? And I'm starting to see that I can. So it's like, you know what? Part of how I approach this question of like being stuck between where I am and where I want to go is, I'll get there. Yeah. And if I don't get there, there are other things that are entering my life that I'm like, no, I enjoy this, and I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I do, and I didn't even know that I did until I had the chance to enjoy it. So, so yeah, man, this has been super fun. Yeah, man, I'm really glad we got to chat. I definitely feel like there's going to be a part 2 because I again, kindred spirits. I feel like you approach creativity the same way. It's a very intuitive thing for you, and I feel like you're a very deep thinker, and so I'd love to just really get down, in there. But we'll save that for a part 2.
That sounds good.
So part of the mystery that is Spencer, how do people find you? Because if I'm not mistaken, you don't have social media?
Yeah, don't have social media. I have a LinkedIn, which I'm not very active on, but that's it. People can show up to the events that I'm at.
Okay.
I do have a website that I'm working on right now. And then I also, it's still in the works, so I can just give you the URL, and nothing's going to come up right now, but once it is at a place where it can have some legs, it'll be there. I probably need help with that, so if I need to talk to somebody.
I might know someone that I can refer you to, depending on what it is that you need. So, yeah.
That sounds good. And then the other way is like I have a link. It's like a shared calendar.
Okay.
That sometimes stays up to date. Sometimes it doesn't, just based on how much people have.
That's really cool.
There. But it's just like I just send that link out and it'll sync to whatever calendar that somebody has. And
really?
Yeah, it'll just show when I have events. I'll just put them in on my phone, and hopefully,
that's real. That is the coolest thing I've ever heard of. Where it's like, A, it's subscribed to a calendar, but B, it's like not something that people know about. It's very exclusive.
That's right.
That is awesome, dude. That's cool, man.
Yeah. So those are the ways, and then you might just see me on the street. I'm in downtown Winston. Yeah. I'm at multiple coffee shops a day.
Yeah. On that note, one of those, I was out, we went deep one night in Winston-Salem. I don't drink, but I like to go hang out just because it's fun. And I think we rolled up to, what was it?
Oh, you're at Joiners.
Joiners. Yeah. And it was like 11:30 at night.
Yeah.
And Spencer's just outside, hanging out, smoking his pipe. I'm like, this guy.
Doing it.
Like a wizard. He just shows up at the right time. He's just where he needs to be at the right place at the right time. And as I'm walking in, I'm like, oh snap, that's Spencer. Oh, hey, what's up, man? I was like, no, this is the right place to be. We ended up staying there until 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right. So. Where he is, that's where y'all need to be.
Yeah, exactly. Right on, man.